Okay, it's recording.
You could always hit
Sorry.
that button earlier. You get some.
The banter, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's a good intro, but it. Yes and no.
It's a little bit trite sometimes.
It's trite. It's very self-indulgent.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is sometimes why I do it. Oh, my friends.
Yeah. I mean, I listen to shit that does that, and I don't mind.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. So yeah, Josh is doing good. Hello, Josh.
Ho.
Hey. Hope camping's good. Sorry for giving you all those things to download, upload into YouTube.
You usually pretend no one's listening.
Oh, don't listen to this, Josh. All right. So the last one was titled Aristocracy versus Imperium. It was a little meandering, but it started off with a focus on Russia and China. Took a big old veering detour, and then eventually I tried to bring it back to Russia and China again. But it somewhat went along the lines of, it introduced the idea of an aristocratic social system versus an imperial social system, which is where we'll begin today's talk.
Well, and that was a week or two ago, so.
About a week ago, yeah. So, Luke, what's the difference between aristocracy and imperium? I was asking myself.
What's an aristocracy again?
Well, it's usually a hereditary social structure, a social structure based upon the inheritance of wealth, where physical property that you own is the single deciding factor, usually of a legally protected social class, which is also the main functioning of the government functions to protect that legal distinction and the interests of that wealthy class.
So the important part is that it's like on paper, institutionalized, legal, political, governmental.
Yes.
Right, because like inheritance happens in other systems, I imagine.
Oh, of course it does. Yeah. The way it often happens is, and this is kind of the gist of what I'm going to be trying to get at, is the social structure and the social, the reality of interactions on the ground is all about wealth and property. Sometimes the technical legal protection and distinction of commoners versus gentry, that often comes later. So it can be less well defined, certainly in the legal structure, especially as an aristocratic system is evolving forward in time. So that, let's say during the early Middle Ages, you don't have a whole lot of counts and dukes and marquesses and things like that. But then those lines harden along legal distinctions and get very, very clearly defined. No, this is a duke. A duke is different from an earl.
Right.
An earl is very different from a castellan or a marcher
interesting.
lord. Oh, it gets
things get specific and taxonomic and.
Oh yeah, as distinctive as like any legal distinction we have today, which is why like the marriage proposals they would have between those families and like the weaving of those aristocratic families together became so convoluted and so complex.
It's sort of this abstraction that develops and becomes codified.
Yes.
But it is this very sort of particular set of rules and games and.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, you would probably, it's a marriage contract between aristocrats in high Middle Ages Europe was probably like an end user license agreement today.
Right, you would need a specialist to write it or read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
They did. Yeah. And it was. So we're not trying to. This is not a episode about those legal technicalities. This is about the culture of aristocratism, so to speak.
Right, because I know a few of these words and not that many, but because I'm but you know, I know. Well, I've heard of monarchies, and I've heard of oligarchies, and I've heard of democracies. But it seems like this is sort of a thing that you don't have to choose one, right?
No,
Because you can
they're
have
blurred. The
you can
edges are
have
blurred.
an aristocratic society within a monarchy,
Yes.
right?
Yes, yes.
So,
And you can have oligarchies, which means what? Rule of the few. That include a whole lot of businessmen, many of whom are maybe commoners, and that doesn't.
interesting. Gotcha.
Like the old money is looking down and poo-pooing on this little upstart, but most ancient Greek city-states were actually oligarchies, and they didn't. I don't think they had anything nearly as codified as the dukes and earls and.
So property is probably still inherited within a family, but the sort of political ruling class is not so obsessed with the title inheritance of
And who your
comte
grandfather was.
or count or earl or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And so it's important to, oh geez, not all oligarchies are the same. Not all aristocracies are the same, and they evolve according to the historical currents of their local time and place, inescapably, as does everything. More important is the kind of. I would love to see a kind of a taxonomical system of where the difference really matters. A lot of, if you were to say, well, ancient Japan had, or there was feudal Japan, let's say, feudal Japan was in some ways similar to feudal Europe or feudal something, or Rome was an aristocratic society. You could call it an oligarchy, but so was the city-state of Corinth. What were the similarities? What were the differences?
Right.
That would be useful,
right.
But you'd have to make what's important is not the really unusual stories at the edges of like, well, this guy was born a commoner, but he was a genius businessman, so it's not really an oligarchy. Yes, it is. It's still an oligarchy.
Right. That's an outlier or an exception or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. What you need to look at is like the fundamental kind of cultural attitudes, the culture.
Okay, so this is sort of not to sort of pin you down with a thesis, but this sounds like it's very near the heart of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're talking about cultural attitudes when it comes
Yes.
to this notion of aristocracy.
Yes.
Before we proceed with that, there was something you said very early on about on the ground, and it just made me wonder if you took a sampling on the ground at the bottom of stuff or people.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, a society.
Right.
Like a cross section.
Right, but let's look at the bottom of the cross section instead of the earls and the dukes.
Okay.
Could you recognize an aristocracy from the action on the ground of the common folk?
Oh.
Does it?
Well, yeah. So let's say you're the lowest rung on the social ladder.
Right, where our cinematic camera, we're about to tell a story about dukes and duchesses, right? But our cinematic camera is on the maybe not the town square, maybe the town market with the muddy people, or Can you tell from that scene whether or not it is culturally an aristocracy or something else?
Well, if you took a snapshot of their material life, no. Because I don't care where you go.
You got people selling pumpkins or cabbages.
It's an agricultural economy.
Right.
Everything is made by hand. Okay? So whether you're going to a small town in feudal Japan or feudal Europe, the vast majority of economic activity is a subsistence farmer farming, So no. But introduce a little change, something has to happen, a conflict happens in that scene, right? Somebody rides in from the outside. If it's an aristocracy and the guy comes in on a horse and he does some damage to somebody's a vending stall, he knocked over all my oranges, or he trampled a chicken that I was going to sell or whatever.
Like all my favorite action stars are always doing.
Yes.
Always fucking up markets.
They love crashing cars into fruit stands.
Even Jackie Chan.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all of them.
Stuff like that.
Fruit stands, man, just getting fucked up all over the place.
It does sometimes seem like you watch an Avengers movie and you're like, oh, this is a symbolic story about our right to go smash up somebody else's property. It is.
Which is weird because we love property so much. But...
Right, but the reason Avengers movies have that, it's just what's the word? Not iconic. Just the necessary. You have to have this scene, no matter what. In the beginning of an Avengers movie of going and smashing up somebody else's city overseas,
right,
is because the Avengers movies exist to make Americans feel good about our smash and grab operations overseas,
right,
that are happening, you know, over and fucking over again. Oh God, the word's gonna pop into my head. I can't. Obligatory, the obligatory scene.
Right.
That was the word I was thinking. If it's an aristocracy. He smashes up your fruit stand from his carriage or the back of a horse, and you can't do a goddamn thing about it. Literally. Commoners could not even testify against nobility. There's a famous story, I remember reading it in A Distant Mirror. There was a king of Hungary, I forget, and he was a guest in Paris, and he was he was a spectator on a trial where a commoner was like suing for damages against a member of the nobility, and they were making the point of like, you can't testify here. He's nobility, you're a commoner. Sorry, bye.
Not how this game is played.
Yep, and because it was very obvious. It was like a pretty bad crime that had been committed against this person. It stunk, you know. It was in very bad taste, even for those times. And this king says, I have the ability to make nobility whenever the hell I want. And he goes and he knights that commoner on the spot. And he took like his spurs, because they had to be armed once you're nobility. He took one of his spurs, which is the form of a knife, and gave it to him. He knighted him on the spot.
So now he's armed.
Now he's armed and he's nobility, and everybody in the crowd is like, "Oh my God!"
So now he can actually play this game in court because he's a knight.
A legal technicality,
right?
It's a true story that actually happened. I forget the details of the king's name. I certainly forget the details of that newly nobilized commoner's name. Nobody remembers him. But it's the culture.
Somebody.
Right? It's crazy. Yeah. But it was real. You know, it's like you are nobility or you aren't. But the overall culture of aristocracy is more what matters. That's the real substrate out of which, like mushrooms, spring these legal formalities and technicalities of actual property.
So the titles comes second, the culture comes first.
Yes,
what you're saying.
That is what I'm saying. That's a claim I'm making.
Right.
And it's very vague. It sounds extremely vague until somebody like Donald Kagan, an American historian, made the point that the real distinction in Western civilization is between aristocrat and commoner.
Mm-hmm. Among
aristocrats, there's a nominal or a spirit of equality, you know, first among equals, this sort of thing. But what really matters is that the commoners are below the aristocrats. There's a class of people, almost always landed gentry, who are superior to and have a different set of rules from everybody else, the masses.
But in my head, I still, when I'm being simplistic and dualistic, I think, well, yeah, the real difference is between the haves and the have-nots. You know, people with money, one set of rules. People without money, another set of rules. I don't know where you put the line, you know, but in this case, it's not necessarily about what you own. because there's this other abstraction on top of it, which is
they come together. It's
well, that's why I don't understand the like useful. I get that's part of what is vague to me.
Because what tends to happen is that the landed classes, the people with money, because money is almost always synonymous with land, unless you're one of those maritime Italian city-states engaging in trade or whatever. They use legal mechanisms to shut out the common person. They make it expressly forbidden many times to have social mobility. Our legal system exists to prevent social mobility. That's not the point. Know your place.
Right.
It's, because the problem is smart people are being born all over the place, whether they're aristocrats or poor people or not. Stop it. You're supposed to be proles, but cultural. So here's another one. There are no, in the early Roman Republic, which was and the High Roman Republic, there were no dukes, there were no earls. Earl is a German term. Carl, they had patricians, fathers of the country. You were a member of a patrician family, and it really fucking meant something to be a patrician. You probably inherited all this wealth, but even more important than that was the name and the distinction. So a poor patrician would go insane at the idea of any plebeian, one of the common people, having more money than him. But he was still better than that pleb. I don't care how fucking much money that pleb has. I am better than any plebeian, It's hard. Because you're right, like dwindling patricians were always getting crossed by rising plebeians, and poor plebeians were always marrying their daughters to, rich plebeians were always marrying their daughters into poor patrician families.
Right, okay.
Terrible shame for the patricians, a real bold move and like a real leg up for the for the plebeian. So it's always happening. You can't actually make that line absolute. And that never exists in any society. It's impossible. You have to understand that this line is very blurry in both directions. Just ask yourself how many aristocratic families don't exist anymore. It helps me sleep at night. Whenever I'm feeling bad at the state of the world, I just go and type up, the House of Bourbon or something, the Carolingian dynasty, whatever.
Do I live in
yes, of course.
Aristocratic society?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a sneaking suspicion that I did.
I hate to break it to you, bro. I'm real sorry. I got something to say.
Okay, I thought I might have.
Yeah, I know.
Thought I might do.
You ever Jared Kushner, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Mark Zuckerberg, these people who seem to know what the world is like and what direction it should be going and how I should be living and what I should believe.
But none of them dukes or earls.
I know. It's just the damnedest thing, isn't it? How is that possible? It's almost like an industrial revolution happened between then and now, but the culture remained the same, fundamentally. Technically, my vote counts the same as Bill Gates' vote. Isn't that cool? I can outvote.
Oh, I love democracy that way. It's so nice that you and Bill Gates have the same
I know.
Political power.
God damn. It helps me sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Not looking up all those dead aristocratic clans. I don't know anything about feudal Japan or whatever, but in feudal Europe, so we're
I've got some animes for you. Just kidding.
Right. It's there. I'm sure. I know the history is there. I'm sure it's very interesting. Those various samurai, families under the shogunates. But in Europe, it was actually very aristocratic. A lot of those monarchs were quite weak, truly. Like they had to tiptoe. They had to walk on eggshells if they were going to do anything that would really offend, especially the really powerful, like the peers of France, the Duke of Normandy, the Duke of Aquitaine, Anjou, a bunch. It's out there. The legalities are there. They were almost equal to the king.
What made them powerful? Where did their power come from? Their wealth?
They had so much
in addition to their
rich
title?
land. Like the Duke of Normandy, on many, many occasions, objectively, zooming out, was far more powerful militarily than the King of France.
Right.
Truly. And the thing was, he shared a common interest with the Duke of Aquitaine or Anjou. They had a common interest against the king. So the king might be like, oh, I'm the embodiment of all of France, kind of. But he has, just by his nature, a common enemy of all these guys. So he has every single one of them one-on-one might almost be as powerful as him, but they have every reason to ally against their own king, right? So the history of France from basically Hugh Capet, roughly 900 to about 1100 is the King of France slowly, laboriously expanding his realm, which sounds like an oxymoron. How could the King of France have to expand his realm? He was almost a prisoner on the Ile de France, his own, the Desmain of France was only this tiny little core of it at Paris. He was almost a captive of his own nobility. The Duke of Normandy would be like, no, you're violating some ancient, obscure code by telling me I have to tear down this castle on the border between you and me. So those 200 years are the King of France slowly recovering his own kingdom from the aristocrats. Dukes of Normandy were incredibly powerful. Thousands of knights at their command. That knight is not going to rebel against his duke to join the King of France in the name of, some sort of vague nationalism. Fuck no. He would be dead. His castle would be razed to the ground and his family exterminated. By the duke, not the king. The king could not provide him protection. As the same, and so as those marriage alliances grew and grew, and as the web grew, because there's only so many provinces of France. There's only so many dukedoms or little castellanes or whatever. So it's like a Fibonacci sequence in reverse. All these little realms that have been shattered by the Viking invasions and the destruction of central authority, it can only get so small. But then marriage alliances in time make it bigger and bigger and bigger. I am the lord of this one region. My wife Eleanor of Aquitaine is the lady of everything. Whoever marries her is gonna be more powerful than the King of France. And Philip II actually made himself her protector in the national interest. He's like, this lady can't just marry whoever she wants. She has, her dowry is half of fucking France.
Oh wow, okay.
Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was also related to the kings of England and stuff. She did marry. Yeah, she married Henry. Ha! Yeah, she was a real deal. You couldn't... She had you shut the fuck up money. She had fuck you money. Nobody she ever encountered was in any position to ever tell her what to do. And, oh God. There have been books written about her. So it's like a Fibonacci sequence in reverse. It can only get bigger and bigger. And eventually they were almost reaching the logical extreme of it. Of everybody's so interbred. There's nowhere else to go. And so you end up with a Charles V of Spain. And
so is this a gradual process of putting small things together into larger and larger things?
Swear to God.
Yeah, okay.
It was actually like that. Not completely that simple, but essentially, because the lower nobility have to do what their lord wants. Their higher lord. I'm the castellan of this little area of Normandy. My liege is the Duke of Normandy. I have to do what he says, But if his daughter marries, I don't know, the King of England. I don't. You kind of get some weird mixed loyalties there because the reason the 100 Years' War happened between France and England was because William the Conqueror was a Duke of Normandy who was technically a liege of the King of France. But he goes and conquers England. Now he's the King of England, but he's still technically a liege of the King of France.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, it caused some problems for a long time because the King of France was like, I can summon you whenever you want, King of England, and the King of England was like, fuck you.
I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a king now.
Yeah, it was, but the technicalities were there. It's the same way with property rights today. Somebody goes, I own this. This is my house. I don't, you can't throw the book out the window just because it really doesn't make sense. You do have to follow the technicalities. And so if the King of France was feeling very powerful, he might kind of push it. And that did happen from time to time. He'd be like, I am summoning my, what are they called? I don't know, vassals. Vassal, yeah. I'm summoning my vassals, and one of them happens to be the King of France, King of England.
Yeah.
And the King of England be like, yeah, I'll come with my army.
I'll answer your summons, but I might have some. My retinue's pretty large these days.
Yeah, and so it was, and so it's,
I'm coming with 5,000 valets.
Yeah,
and they happen to be carrying steel.
Longbows.
Yeah,
and so it was. It's not all too dissimilar today. We wretched plebeians reading the news about hostile takeovers in Wall Street or buyouts or like, oh, the CEO of this something is in negotiations with some other, what is it, mutual fund or whatever. Look at all these billionaires jet-setting around as if they owned the place.
Seems like they might own the place.
They own it.
Sorry, I get distracted every time you say plebeian because the Crimea River, this old tune?
Yeah. Oh, I thought you meant the Justin Timberlake.
No. I can't remember the actual lyric, but they rhyme plebeian with me and. It's a really cheesy line. Say your love was too plebeian. Something, 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 me and.
Me and Mike.
It's just a sort of a clunky line for a jazz standard.
Yeah.
Too plebeian. Okay, sorry.
No, one thing to the aristocratic world order in ancient Rome, the voting blocks were according to wealth. Literally. So it's like, if you have this much money, you are in this number one voting block, right? The absolute richest. 5 million sesterces a year or whatever. Literally, by wealth. You had to, report it, I presume, through tax receipts. That's an interesting one. I don't know how they reported it. Or, through land surveys, surveying.
Sure.
Whereas if you are...
That's some nice bureaucracy there. Got to send folks out to...
Yeah.
Which survey people's property.
In the ancient world, land...
Count how many sheep or...
Land was wealth.
Right.
Land was wealth. Whereas the average person, you have an income of 10 sesterces a year. But the blocks all voted had an equal weight. So, the top richest block might have 5 dudes in it. Their votes for their block have the exact same weight as the bottommost block that has 100,000 individuals in it. Their votes of 10 men are equal to 100,000 votes. And, apparently, I wasn't there, but when they would vote on the Campus Martius on really important issues, they would have to vote according to their wealth block. And if the top... So let's say there's 10 blocks. If by the time you get to 5, the first 5 votes are all in the same direction, they wouldn't even vote. They would cancel the election. They would say, well, it's over.
It's done.
We have a majority. Majority? Fuck you. Fuck you into historical oblivion. Fuck you. But that's what actually happened, apparently. It really was like that. I'll send you the lecture. It's frustrating to listen to. Rome was not a democracy.
Is this during the Republic?
This is the Republic.
The Republic, right. This is the voting.
Republic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all the freedom of Rome or whatever, no. It was the freedom of the top 6, the top majority wealth voting blocks. It was like the Electoral College, but wealth only.
Mm-hmm.
It would be... It's the same world. We're living in the same world.
Yeah, right.
Fuck you.
Sure,
Bill Gates sitting down and telling me how the world works when I know more about it than he does. Sorry. Okay, he sort of knows about the molten salt reactor now. You know?
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, cool. Fuck you. Fuck you. The molten salt reactor was invented by Alvin Weinberg, not you.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for the couple bucks they gave me to go to college.
Oh, did they?
Couple
Less than
bucks.
the Jimmy Hoffa one?
I feel like they were pretty close. I can't remember.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The James R. Hoffa Memorial Scholarship was like $1,000. I can't remember what the fucking Achievers Scholarship was. It wasn't a lot, but
yeah. These crumbs they scatter.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they
That's
get
right.
and what's so devastating about it is they get judged. It's the widow's mite, you know. If they give charity to somebody, they're judged as if they were an average individual. It's like, no, son, you know.
That's right. There's a great scene in not to talk.
Too late now. You're
Disney. It's a Disney movie. Sorry, but it's a great flick. Robin Hood.
Sure.
The Foxes.
Oh yeah.
Roger Miller as Alan Adale.
One of your favorites.
Whew. But there is a scene where the church mice, we've been saving this one for a rainy day, and old Friar Tuck, your last farthing. Because things are bad and it's raining. We're saving this for a rainy day.
Oh man.
There's the organ in the background.
They're so pathetic. Yeah.
Yeah. On Friar Tuck.
They're blind too, aren't they? Yeah. Aren't they blind? The blind church, right?
I don't think they're blind.
Oh no!
Because
you're
Robin Hood pretends to be blind.
That's the one I'm remembering.
Briefly,
and sure enough, he bounces his coin into the cup and catches them on the way out.
Yeah, that's right.
Fucking
so good,
move.
So good. There's another scene where an old hound dog is hiding some coins in his broken leg cast.
Oh yeah, and he's fucking bouncing it out. Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Oh, fuck yeah.
It's a great flick.
It's a fun one. The football scene, I remember just some like hen in like a nun suit, like bouncing around. It was fun.
Yeah.
I was like 4 years
she's
old.
Like
yes.
She's like Maid Marian's like old nursemaid or something, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the sexy fox Maid Marian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I would.
Damn.
You said it first, but I won't disagree.
Yeah, jeez.
And then he's swashbuckling, sword fighting, and he's with all of his bravado. He's like got Marion in one arm, and he's sword fighting in the other. And he's talking about where they're gonna go on their honeymoon. Where Paris?
Oh, man. What a fox! Oh man. Yeah. So there it is, folks.
Wait, what made me think of that?
The coins. Yeah, the church mice saving their...
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like you said, the widow's...
Yeah,
percentage might be a decent lens. Oh, Jeff Bezos gave him $1 million to some charity. Well,
it's happening now.
$1.37 for me.
Yeah, like me, me giving money to the beggars living next door, literally, is probably literally a greater percentage than what they give.
Right.
And even if it isn't, I don't give a shit. If you... At what point is it a good Samaritan law of like, well, Bill, this many people died in Africa today of basic starvation or something we can economically work out of, like, you want to cure vitamin E blindness, which is a thing, shouldn't be a thing. we're actually going to put you on trial for manslaughter because you could have saved those lives. Why not? Why not? A symbolic trial.
Right.
Have the UN do it or something. Because they're dying. You could stop it, and you're not. So, go ahead.
Oh, no. This is probably just a bad, not
Should I?
interesting road to go down. But I sometimes, I don't know if it's responsible or self-aware or sort of silly, but I think, well, I know we have different means,
right,
but maybe we're just different places on a spectrum, and
like all lines, it's fuzzy. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
I could do more.
So could I. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I bought that book. I could have paid.
Right. I bought this 6-pack.
Yep. I'm drinking beer.
Yeah.
You're right. It's a fuzzy line, but I would very gladly give a greater percentage of my wealth to help fight that kind of poverty, like vitamin E blindness, than probably Bill Gates is willing to give up. So
Right.
until he's willing to match
yeah.
me 1-to-1 on
Yeah.
percentage, sorry, the onus is on him. It's a blurry line, and it's just okay. So go ahead.
Oh,
now we
just
need to get into
Yeah,
Imperium.
we do. I can't remember the specific lives of these specific saints. I think it's Joachim and Anna. But when I was a kid, I always thought it was sort of inspiring. I think one of them might have been a bishop. But he outdid the tithing. Apparently, he tithed. Well, he gave to the church 1/3 of his income. He gave to the poor 1/3 of his income, and he lived on the other third. I'm like, well, boy, that's a pretty cool way to be
Sure.
comfortable. I mean,
yeah.
if you're that rich,
Right.
that you can live on 1/3 of your income.
Right.
Hey, nice.
Yeah.
I mean, probably the church didn't need it.
No.
But nice to give 1/3 of your income to the poor,
Right.
wherever they may be.
So we just took a very broad look at aristocratic civilization or aristocratism, for lack of a better word, because we're not talking about the specifics of is it an earl or a duke. We were talking about the substrate, the cultural substrate.
So you're telling me there's an alternative, which
Yeah.
I already find hard to believe.
Yeah, there's multiple alternatives, but the other one is most salient to today's situation is Imperium. Imperium is not the same as aristocratism. Imperium is the creation of a third leg on the stool.
What are the first two?
Aristocrats and commoners.
Oh, okay.
Right. And that's most of Western civilization. You want to talk about the Middle Ages, the kings were a part of the aristocratic system. They were not above it. Imperium is the creation of an imperial center or imperial institutions at the center that rise above both commoners and aristocrats and balance them against each other.
I see. So we're talking about a thing, but it doesn't preclude the existence of the aristocracy.
No, it does not. But
Aristocrats still exist.
Oh yeah,
in Imperium,
and the aristocrats' interests are also defended by the Imperium or the Emperor. But so are the interests of the
but
commoners.
now we actually have maybe mitigator is the wrong word because it's sort of above. It's not in between necessarily.
Oh, it's above. It is above.
Right.
It is not. That is what the aristocrats can't stand. Don't tell me that you're better than me. I am.
And
I'm the emperor.
also don't tell me how to deal with the commoners.
Right, which the emperor will tell them
That's
to do.
my job.
Yeah.
I do with the commoners whatever I will do with the commoners.
Yes. And
when they take me to court, too bad they can't because they're commoners.
Right.
Until someone gives them a spur.
Right, making them an aristocrat or the commoner appeals to the imperial courts and says, "This aristocrat burned my hut down and raped my daughter. I'm taking my local aristocrat to court."
Yeah.
And the imperial government puts the aristocrat on trial, equal legally. Both are subjects of the imperial government.
So, okay, this is starting to become clearer. In that first case, the aristocracy, there's nowhere to go.
Literally.
The only place to go is to the aristocracy.
Literally.
If you're a commoner with some sort of gripe. And sometimes they try and keep you happy, maybe. They sprinkle crumbs at you.
You're going to the court of the guy who committed the crime against you.
Right.
It's like you taxed me more than what I could pay and what we ever legally agreed upon, of like normal taxation. You just rode the fuck in and took all my cows.
Right.
What do you want me to do? And he's like, go away.
Yeah.
I'm your crime boss.
Right.
I'm your local drug lord. Go away. What the fuck are you doing here? Those are your cows out back, bro. You're a little late in the game. Who are you complaining to? I'm the one who did it to you.
Oh, yeah. Pretty bleak.
That's how it existed for peasants, at least in Western Europe, for hundreds of years. They could literally not appeal to the king. Because if they did even try, they'd be killed by their local aristocrat. The king can't even go there with his army. And the king is 99% of the time on the side of the aristocrat.
Right.
When
he's worried about appeasing his like you were sort of describing this relationship that sounded very fragile to me. One wrong step and there might be some regicide in the future,
or like a revolt that gives the king regicide is pretty rare.
I was actually going to ask about that. How common that was.
What would happen is it's like a King John Lackland of England, or some kings of France, where they would try to extend their royal rule. And there would be multiple revolts of all of their aristocratic, technically vassals, that would happen almost very quickly. And he would be forced to go to the negotiating table with egg on his face.
Sorry, I overreached.
Yep. Yeah, straight up.
I'll pull back.
Literally.
Let's not.
Yeah.
Get
Okay.
too
And
excited.
a lot. It would backfire. He would have less power. Not more after trying to overreach. Oh, it was a pretty wretched thing to medieval kings weren't all that.
For like a microsecond, I almost felt bad for a king. That was weird.
Yeah. Excuse me. This is very different from like high Renaissance, early modern era like Louis XIV. Totally different.
Right.
That's the age of absolutism. That's them essentially imposing Imperium. And there's, just multiple stories of like Imperium worked for Louis XIV. It did not really work for the Holy Roman Emperors. It broke down. You have to get into the specifics. That's not what we're about here.
Right.
We're not about the specifics. But Imperium is the idea that everybody, the aristocrats are a hell of a lot better off than the commoners, especially in terms of wealth. But everybody is equal under the Imperium.
Interesting. Because it's funny, I mean, the picture you've painted so far, it's clearly I'm so glad the Imperium showed up. It's clearly much kinder. Although I'm sort of suspicious of the state to begin with.
Yeah.
It should be. But I'm glad those nobodies have somewhere to go all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Instead of just being
like a legal system, maybe, or having rights that are actually exist and are not subject to the whim of your local boss.
Right. Right.
So yeah. When.
Yeah, like it's like you were already saying, it's sort of a bad news if the place you write letters to is also the place that is perpetrating the things you're writing letters about.
Yeah. You're writing letters to the crime boss.
Right.
Saying, please don't commit crimes against
Yeah.
me. It's so bad. Like
Yesterday, I got punched. Yeah, to the puncher. Yesterday, I got punched.
Yeah.
Yours, the punchy.
The schoolyard bully. Yesterday, my lunch money was stolen.
By you.
Yeah.
Can you do anything about that?
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Dude, the history of the Middle Ages in Western Europe is just one peasant revolt after another, and they all fucking failed.
Oh.
It sucks.
That does
Almost
suck.
all. There's a few shining Battle of Courtrai and the others. It's so cool. Sempach.
Was that like
The
a
Swiss.
like 1,000 years?
No. I'm talking roughly from the end of the Viking invasions. Let's make that arbitrarily 900 to about the Black Death.
Which is
1350. Say that. 1348. That's the high. Yeah.
high Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes the Middle Ages is like
Yeah.
400 to 14 or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's just making a
Gotcha.
shorter distinction.
The Middle Ages.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. That
Or the
was
high Middle. Yeah.
kind of what happened was the Carolingian Renaissance and revival was an attempt, and it was sort of succeeded at unifying Christendom, except for Britain.
Carolingian.
Yeah.
What does this mean?
Charlemagne.
Charlemagne?
Yeah.
Because it sounded like Charlemagne.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Carl, Charles,
Yeah, big
Charlemagne.
fat Charlemagne. Yeah.
Or sometimes Carol.
Right.
I'm going to call him Carol. from now on.
Carolus. He was an interesting fellow. There was that brief effort at doing it, late 700s, early 800s, utterly shattered by the Viking invasions and raids. Shattered. And after they wrecked the Carolingian project, not that they didn't... Charlemagne's sons were left something to be desired as far as leadership goes. Louis the Pious was imprisoned by his sons twice, put in a monastery. The second time he basically waited. He's like, I don't know what the fuck to do. You come to me.
What was he called Louis the Pious because he was
he didn't have
imprisoned in monasteries a couple times?
They called him the Pious because there wasn't anything else to say about him. Like, fuck, dude.
that would be a funny joke though.
Right.
You got sequestered.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah. Oh, it was a catastrophe. Like the late. Oh God. Yeah. So the Vikings shattered that, and then all the dukedoms that I've been talking about, especially Normandy, the Northmen. You know, these are fucking Vikings who have recreated themselves as feudal lords. Normandy.
Right.
Northmandy.
Right.
A bunch of Vikings settled there, and eventually, we ran out of silver to steal. Give us the land instead, and whatever, Charles the Fat, Charles the Bald, I forget. Right?
Nice.
Not some good name.
Yeah.
That's their name! That's what they were called by their own fucking subject.
That's so good.
Dude.
Charles the Fat, followed by Charles the Bald, followed by Charles the Lazy, followed by Charles the Stinky.
Fuck it. Yeah. Fuck it. The Carolingians are done. It shattered the center of power that, for a moment, Charlemagne did truly recreate a moment of Imperium.
Mm.
This is right in line with what we're saying. This isn't a divergent.
Okay.
He created a moment of Imperium. There are no stone castles in Europe during that period. And any wooden castles that do exist are publicly owned buildings.
Whoa!
And if a local
it's illegal to build a stone castle.
It is utterly illegal. It's like me getting a howitzer or a nuclear weapon.
Right, or a nuke. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And Imperial
not
agents
allowed.
from Aachen in Germany, the capital, will come and take back your nuclear weapon and put you in prison on trial for it. Because what the fuck are you doing?
What are these publicly owned wooden castles doing?
They're strong points to help fight against Viking invaders.
Ah.
But they're central.
There's no lord of the castle.
No, you are appointed as an official of the central government.
Aha.
This matters. At the end of the Viking invasions, roughly 70 years later, when it's just like, fuck, we screwed the pooch. We can't provide local security, even as a joke. All the dukes of Aquitaine, Normandy, Anjou, these others tended to be the local strongmen who could provide the local security until it goes, oh, yeah, you provided local security, and now there's nobody to provide local security against you. The imperial center can't hold. And the Capetian dynasty, Hugh Capet, believe it or not, there was a big Viking siege of Paris in like the 860s, 870s, led by Count Odo, who was something, or Bishop? Odo. He was the grandfather of Hugh Capet. He was elected by some of these local nobility now, who elect him as the King of France, basically almost as a figurehead.
What?
Yeah.
Why did they find it? What was the utility in having a king? Yeah.
As he's kind of like the United Nations of today. If he does side in my favor, or the Pope, if he does side in my favor, I have this piece of paper.
So look.
Yeah. No,
sanctioned by the king.
Yeah. I want the King of France to exist so that I could use him as a fig leaf to fight with my local competitors.
Wow.
He's a figurehead who exists as a symbolic carte blanche, casus belli, if he should arise. If he says boo to my cause, I'm trying to conquer some borderland between me and Brittany or something, I'll completely ignore him.
Right.
Pretend he doesn't exist. But if he gives me a piece of paper that says, I want you to defend this area against raids from Brittany, suddenly I'm the...
Then I've got this imagined legitimacy.
Yep, legitimacy.
That's weird, though. It's such a strange, artificial manufactured legitimacy.
But they also...
If you did it yourself.
Truly, I think in the back of their minds, here I am psychoanalyzing somebody from 900, but it was probably like, we don't want to completely lose France. So we need some sort of figurehead to be there.
Sure. Also, you're probably pretty used to having a king of France.
Yeah.
And whether or not...
Charlemagne was not the king of France. He was the Holy Roman Emperor. We've talked about him before. He was more than that, because he ruled a lot of Germany, too.
Mm.
But Frankland, West Frankland started to split away, and so we need... he was not a Carolingian. Hugh Capet was not. He gained legitimacy because of his grandfather's exploits against the Vikings. They lifted the siege of Paris.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So they found a guy. To be the puppet.
Right.
And it turns out that Capetian dynasty lasts for something like 400 years through various branches. And eventually,
because old Otto did a good job.
Right? It seems weird until you go, wait a minute, who the fuck was George Washington? I don't give a, who the fuck was Thomas Jefferson? Seems real weird until it isn't. So Imperium. No, we are not a bunch of local aristocratic money grubbing interests. There is a broader nation or civilization, God forbid, that does not care if you want to squeeze the peasants a little more. I don't care if you want a little more coins, Mr. Scrooge, you want to swim around in. I don't give a fuck.
You get to be an aristocrat.
Oh, yeah. They will defend your aristocratic title.
Right. This isn't an egalitarian project.
This is not communists getting rid of the boyars. This is not the French Revolution. This is Imperium.
But there's only so far you can squeeze until we step in.
Yep.
Where
you don't squeeze that peasant. That peasant is my peasant.
Not
yours.
Your peasant. Oh yeah.
This is a peasant of the Imperium, not your personal fucking property. Yeah, he's
not a serf.
There could be serfdom with Imperium, most notably Russia. But you had real rights with the central government, even if you were a serf.
And a serf is someone working someone else's land or something.
It depends on local details.
Right.
So like
I didn't actually know what I meant when I said serf.
Okay, fair
but
enough.
you took it seriously and said, well, there could be. So you have some idea of what you mean when you say serf.
It depends. So like in Western Europe, serfdom was mostly actually abolished. Even around like 1500s, serfdom is gone. It gets reinforced in Imperial Russia, unfortunately. But in like China, in Imperial China, they were free peasants. So they were
So what's the difference between a serf and a peasant?
Serfs actually, even in Russia, Imperial Russia, could be bought and sold.
Oh, holy crap.
Yeah, it sucks. It was bad.
Dang.
Yeah. Even though they still had Imperium. Right? I know. This is another one of those blurry lines.
No, it's fuzzy.
How could you have Imperium if an aristocrat could still buy and sell his serfs? Right? There it is, the question.
So what's a peasant?
Peasants are people who have family ties to a chunk of land, usually. So, like, you inherit your dad's farm even though you never have to pay for it, right? It's just, like, this has been our family farm since time immemorial. But they tended to be free. They could leave the land if they wanted to. Serfs could not,
It's not their land.
No, they weren't free to... Yeah, yes, it wasn't their land, and no, they weren't free to leave.
Weren't free to leave.
Yeah. Because there's an element of, like, how is this not just about aspects of jurisdiction? Because, like, I live in Pierce County. Am I something of Pierce County? Do I belong to it? No. Does my farm belong to it? Yes.
But you're free to leave.
I can leave if I want. I can do sort of what I want with the land. Not anything I want. No siree. Regulations and whatnot.
Right.
So am I a free man? Yes. Is my land free? No. I have to pay a fee called a mortgage to live here. Well, then who owns it? The bank. Okay. Is the bank free to buy and sell my mortgage to other banks? Yes. Without my permission? Yes. It's nuts, right?
Right.
So it's a blurry line, but serfs are in a much worse position than peasants.
Right. Back to Imperium, and also blurry lines. We've already decided we live in an aristocracy.
Yes.
But
yeah,
if Jeff Bezos ran over my toe,
you could sue him.
I could sue him.
Yeah. Yes.
Probably wouldn't work very well.
He'd just pay you to shut up.
Right.
Yeah.
But there is, I mean, and I don't have a lot of faith in it.
Right.
But there is ostensibly an institution I can appeal to.
Called the courts.
Called the courts. That's not my local aristocrat, or even the aristocrat that ran over my toe.
You have a right to a lawyer. If you cannot afford a lawyer will be a public expense.
Well, so aren't these characteristics of Imperium?
Yes, they are characteristics of it. Yes, but at the core of it, we are still not an Imperium. That's what I've been getting at this whole entire time.
Aha.
Yeah,
we found it.
Yeah. So it's not. This is kind of
tricked me again. Just kidding.
You've done it again, Oswald. That's why I was struggling so hard at the beginning of this episode. It's not about necessarily. No, I shouldn't even.
You're right. You were very big on using the word culture in the beginning. Yeah.
Not the specific detail.
Right. I can point to an institution and say, "Hey, look at this," but that's.
You do have that, and I'm not denigrating that.
Right.
And the protection of courts and like the appointment of public attorneys if you can't afford it. So even if you're just some poor fucking homeless fucker who gets run over by a big company truck, you can sue that company and you will get a qualified lawyer, not a very well paid one. That's not what I mean. Those are characteristics of empire, but they do not cut into the fundamental culture of aristocracy that we have in the West.
We're back to your thesis.
Yeah, that is the thesis. And it's a thesis without even, like, what are you talking about? Well, really vague cultural concepts.
Right, but now at least I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, finally. We got there at 59 minutes.
Yeah.
In the big Venn diagram, you have aristocracy and you have Imperium. and they don't really overlap. But if they do touch each other, there are some aspects of Imperium that little isolated bubbles of Imperium that are borrowed, like equality under the law or the right to vote, that can float around inside of Aristocracy without changing its fundamental character.
Right.
And there are aspects of Aristocracy that can float around inside of Imperium that don't change the fundamental character of Imperium.
Right.
Okay. So, an interesting example is the middle and the high and middle Eastern Roman Empire, often called the Byzantine Empire, right? When the Islamic so you had the early Eastern Roman Empire when it was still trying to recreate a Roman Empire, Mediterranean basin-wide empire. Let's forget about that, sort of.
Okay.
After the Islamic invasions, it was trimmed. It had been trimmed up.
When are we talking here?
Okay, so if it's the year 600, you have the Eastern Roman Empire very seriously considering, like, we could recreate the Roman Empire.
Right.
700, no. By 700, Islam stretches from Morocco to the Indus River. Okay, and they've lost Egypt and everything, and they're reduced basically to Greece and Western Anatolia. Which is not without reason. The period following this is called the Byzantine Dark Ages, right?
Oh, never heard of it.
It was a tough time to be a Byzantine. They had a serious crisis of faith. It's like, why is God doing this to us? I thought,
but probably still nicer in Byzantium than it is in Western Europe.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
in the proper Dark Ages.
Oh fuck! The year what? 700 in West Francia.
Not that that's the
no. It was just
term du jour. I think that's one of those things we've canceled, is saying Dark Ages.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so the civilian and military, administrative, and institutional apparatus in Constantinople became the plaything between several different rough factions. Let's call them broadly more like self-interests, because it was so much weaker than it used to have been when it was true Imperium. But it was still a hell of a prize to be able to claim.
Right. All this sort of machinery and skeletal structure, and
you had it.
It's still sort of there.
Oh yeah, it's there. It's a shadow of its former self,
right.
But it's very much there.
It's lost some potency, but it's still something to be claimed.
Your navy has Greek fire. You've withstood 2 Arab sieges. Right? There's a military that can do recruitment, and there's several million people, peasants in the countryside and aristocrats, who are loyal Christian subjects of the emperor in Rome. But from time to,
in Rome?
Constantinople. Yeah.
New Rome. Yeah.
Yeah, Nova Roma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? He's the Roman emperor. He speaks Greek, but he's the emperor.
Right, not Rome, Constantinople.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It is Rome. Yeah, it's Rome. Yeah. So it's the Roman Empire. It's what's left of it. The city of Rome in Italy, ruled by Lombards. Or the Pope. Oh, Christ. From time, there's this fascinating kind of tug of war between, it tended to be aristocratic, very powerful. What is it? What is it? Oh, there's a word. The word for nobility or something comes from a Greek word for these families in Anatolia.
But then it gets Russenized.
Maybe. They had enormous estates. That was where all the military recruiting and where the cavalry came from. Very important to counter these Arabs. Not Turks, Arabs.
Okay.
The Turks have not invaded the Middle East yet. Okay? Right? There was this tug of war over Constantinople, and so from time to time you would get an aristocratic family who then, out of survival and self-interest, kind of plunders the state, so to speak, or like twists the central government to serve their own interests over in eastern Anatolia, which maybe are the interests of survival of the Byzantine Empire, what's left of the Roman Empire, but maybe not. Maybe all my family members are going to go in there. And then, so this happened, and for a long time, this is over hundreds of years, and you have incredibly interesting stories that are worth getting into, but we'll go past them, of like very low level military officers rising to become emperor and doing purges
fun.
of their emperors. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It was sordid.
Purges.
Yeah, hence the term like Byzantine politics, things like that. And then you had this
right.
straight up.
I've been wondering about that.
Yeah.
Because I had to look it up a couple times.
Convoluted, a maze.
Obscure,
Yeah.
Opaque, but also complex, labyrinthine, yeah.
And then there happened to be this guy called Basil II of the Macedonian dynasty who survived as a young man the sordid Byzantine politics of the Byzantine Empire. Him and his brother managed to survive as a young man, and he did it by pretending to be a lot less serious than he actually was. He lived life to the fullest in Constantinople as a 20-year-old, just banging hookers and rolling dice and hanging out with everybody and partying hard, even though at heart he was a very conscientious
serious
guy.
Right.
Yeah.
That was him slow playing it.
Yes.
Oh man, wow.
Because
what a cool way to do that.
Because if all these powers like vultures revolving around the central government had taken him seriously, he
knew he'd be dead, right?
Yes.
He knew well enough.
So he had the legitimacy.
I'll be a playboy.
Yes,
yeah.
I'll be a playboy. I'll fuck it. I'll pretend to be a playboy. Because later in life he lived kind of a monkish. Swear to God, Basil II is fucking amazing.
It was actually sort of a chore to bang all those hookers.
Yeah, goddamn.
I don't even like gambling.
I don't even like drinking.
But I guess I'm gonna have to.
I
guess I have to bang this hooker to not be poisoned.
I gotta hang out with all these actors, actresses, and chariot drivers, drinking myself.
Chariot drivers. It's like race cars.
I'm doing this to live, baby. I'm not doing it for you. I'm gonna be the emperor someday, but
do chariot drivers have some amount of celebrity?
Oh,
they're like Dale Earnhardt.
Oh yeah. Oh, dude, the blues and the greens, and shit.
Awesome.
They were the athletes of their time. They replaced the gladiators.
Yeah.
They had total celebrity. They were as good as it get. Like, they came into the room.
A total playboy.
Champagne is popping.
He's hanging out with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
He's hanging out with...
Yeah, absolutely. Check out this moron emperor of ours. So... So he eventually takes... So he's been the emperor for a while, but he has all these regents, right? Like, he took imperial... He was emperor as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
At this... So with the distinction I've been drawing, at this stage you say there is no Imperium in Rome. The Imperium doesn't exist. It's aristocratism. Aristocrats are controlling the apparatus of government, all the levers of power. Okay? Byzantium, yes. In Constantinople.
In Eastern Rome.
Yeah, I keep saying Rome. I don't mean the city.
Right.
He eventually sits on the throne himself, and the regents are put away, and he tries to put some policies in, and he incites a revolt in the eastern provinces of these aristocrats who are like, what the fuck do you think you're doing? You can't drain the swamp. So, one thing so he's fighting for his life. Like, he's essentially besieged in Constantinople, and his sister gets married. I think his sister. He sends his sister to go marry the king of the Varangian Rus up in the city of Kiev, and the price is, if you want to have a imperial empress of Rome be your wife, you have to give me 10,000 big tough guys called the Varangian Guard. This is where it starts, and convert to Christianity. And he uses that Varangian Guard to scare the shit out of these Greek. The Varangians are like, they're Vikings. They're Vikings with double-headed axes who have from Kiev. They're Kievian Rus, Swedish Viking stock guys who have carved out these principalities up in the Volga and the Don.
And they haven't gone fat yet.
No, they're not fat yet.
And Basil II has aristocrat problems.
Yeah, I've got aristocrat problems in Anatolia, and they're heading west towards my capital in Constantinople.
But I can marry my sister to this Varangian.
Yeah.
If
I need the fighter, I need the muscle, and I need you to convert to Christianity. Valdemar was his Viking name. He became Vladimir. This is close to your home. This is around 1000.
Getting closer.
Yeah, this is like 999 AD.
It's very exciting.
So he uses this Varangian Guard to scare the crap out of these other guys, and that's a classic example of Imperium. You have a core guard of outsiders. You are disciplined enough, and you have the money to keep these outsiders as an absolute loyal bodyguard who can get shit done if it needs to get done. They are loyal to me, the emperor, and nobody else. There was an emperor of Morocco who had the Black Guard. They were like 10,000 slaves of sub-Saharan Africa, because he's Berber, 10,000, the Black Guard. They can get shit done. They're technically personally his slaves, but actually they're pretty much in charge of the country, right?
Wow.
And he put his aristocrats in order using them.
His Imperium relies on this.
Yeah. So Basil does this 600 years earlier in the Byzantine Empire, and he instates Imperium, and he puts the aristocrats down. He doesn't.
They thought it had gone away.
Yeah, they thought they were running the show.
Right.
But he
and
was
so they
clever
got
enough.
mad when when he was emperor the whole time.
Technically, he was a puppet beforehand.
Right.
And then he instated.
He slow played, pretended to be a nothing.
Yep.
But then when he decided to actually flex his whatevers.
Yeah. His imperial legitimacy.
The aristocracy said, No. Yeah. That's not how things work.
Yep.
We say how things work.
Yep.
The title is pretty much nothing. And stop it. And then he found some manpower.
He made some moves.
Cool.
Goddamn. And with those, Theodosian walls guarding Constantinople where he was and the access to the sea, he could get those Varangians in there, cross the Bosphorus, and enforce some discipline. No, you aristocrats will not serve your own interests. You will serve the empire's interests. So will the peasants.
Right.
So,
you still get to be aristocrats.
Yeah. And they have legal title to their land. He probably he would have had to have killed the few ringleaders, but the majority of them, he's like, okay, right? I'm in charge. I represent the empire. You're fine. You're safe with me. I will not confiscate your lands. I am not in the process of, overthrowing the order.
Right.
I am in the process of reinforcing it, and you will do what the fuck I tell you to do. But I will have the discipline to also look out for your self-interests. But you are not in charge of the central government.
Right. This isn't an aristocracy.
Yep.
This is an imperium.
Yes. So, Basil II is worthy of a talk of his own. So let's fast forward, though. So he was monkish. He never had a son. He has two nieces from his Basil pretended to love to party. His brother, oh God, I forgot his name. I think it was Constantine, like Constantine the Ninth. Maybe wrong. younger brother, his brother, loved to actually party. So Basil took to the field, defeated the Bulgars, really put things in order. He took the Byzantine Empire to its height, but he never had sons of his own. He inherits these three nieces from his brother, who was the actual party animal, who really loved hanging around Constantinople and having fun.
Wait, do you inherit nieces when your brother dies, or do you just sort of do they just become your wards for some reason because you're?
He never allowed the nieces to marry Basil, so the nieces are going to be the empresses of Rome.
Ooh,
in Constantinople, Zoe and Theodora.
I was gonna say, is one of them Theodora?
Yeah. So
Saint Theodora.
I think so. So this is where Imperium goes bad. The third daughter had smallpox. The third niece had smallpox, and she became a nun. Theodora became a nun, on again, off again. Nun again, off again. But Zoe inherits the Byzantine Empire at its absolute height. Basil, her uncle, is the reason why Serbia is Orthodox to this day. Basil knew what he was doing, and he protected the peasants against the rapaciousness of the aristocrats, and he worked on integrating the Slavs. He's called the Bulgar Slayer because he shattered the power of the Bulgarians. He blinded every man. He left one eye and 1 out of 100 after he defeated them. And he gave the Bulgarian Khan a heart attack, apparently. It was a nasty war. He established very rational borders and agreements with Islamic powers to his south, and created a second Byzantine heartland in Eastern Europe, which is kind of what rescued them after the Turks invaded and took Anatolia. Well, how did that happen? Zoe inherits all of this. She inherits an empire at its literal height. She inherits a treasury that is like Scrooge McDuck. Because Basil was disciplined in his spending. So all that trade going through the Bosphorus and going up and down the Danube is thriving. And Constantinople is this colossal cultural capital, Never been sacked up until this point, right? She inherits all of this, and she's just not up to the job. She just is a kind of silly, frivolous woman. It's very tragic. Her name means life, Zoe, I think. And what Theodora means, God.
God something.
Yeah. Adored. They inherit all of this.
Oh, you know what? Oh, no, that's probably not true. Never mind.
Theotokos is, right.
Oh, Godmother.
Yeah. Theodora, I don't know. They inherit all of this. Theodora doesn't really want to be in charge. Zoe wants to, the way a gossip likes being the center of attention. And she just she inherits the throne. Basil dies 1025, her uncle. She inherits the throne, literally doesn't know what to do. Has no idea about initiative or the future. She can't imagine anything beyond herself, and just fucking screws the pooch. The army dwindles away, the navy, frivolous spending, and then eventually what happens is she's a very lost individual, right? And she has all these horrible husbands who are sent there to kind of rescue her personally. And those husbands are worse and worse, because if they marry Zoe, they're the emperor of Rome in Constantinople, right? And they just fuck it up, and they just fuck up everything. And then eventually, Basil also actually had southern Italy and Sicily too. He's doing pretty good. He doesn't have Egypt, he doesn't have the Levant, but he's doing pretty goddamn good. He could have essentially, the Roman Empire, it could arguably exist today as essentially Turkey, what Turkey is today. The Turks show up invading out of Central Asia, because they swept through the Islamic world and set up the Seljuk Empire. Normans, who are they? Heard of them? Set up shop in southern Italy and Sicily and start chopping up the Byzantine Empire from the edges. Zoe dies eventually, and this is the example of when Imperium goes bad. Strangely enough, if aristocrats had seized control of Constantinople from the Imperium from Zoe after Basil had died, they might have done a better job than Zoe did. But Zoe had Imperium. But Imperium relies on a mentally competent individual to be in charge and actually be able to know what's going on and delegate.
Really needs a one human at the top.
Yeah, or like a cabal of people so tight-knit that they actually trust each other. Because sometimes, swear to God, Imperium has sometimes been helped along limped along for what's the word? Not delegation, regency. Sometimes there's like 3 advisors who are like, the old king is dead. He knew what he was doing. He brought us to the heights. The young king is too young. If we hold together and don't fight among ourselves and no politics, no assassinations, no nothing, we can hold on to this. And then he can take the throne when he's 15.
Right.
And he can hold it together. He could maybe do it. But Zoe was too old.
And if we don't mess it up, he'll even maybe be halfway good at it. He or she.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fast forward into the story of the failure of Byzantium. They were called like the 3 Mustafas or something. They overthrew a sultan themselves and replaced him with like a more competent younger brother.
Whoa.
You know, just I forget the details, but it can actually happen. Imperium, that center of competency and looking at the entire society from the top down, not just rich versus poor. Zoe was she was old. She was a mature adult. You couldn't contradict her in conversation. She knew to go forward and make a proclamation in public, so you couldn't behind the scenes change things. And she fucked it up so badly. She blew the treasury. She spent the whole goddamn thing. This is the story of why Russia is the new center of Orthodox Imperium instead of Constantinople. She's the inflection point for the Byzantine Empire. She screwed up so badly that in 1071, the Turks, after she had died, she eventually died an old, kind of broken, withered. I mean, it's just a tragic story. She was ruined by the position, and Basil should have married her off. Theodora tried to take the reins for like 12 months, but she was an old woman. She came out of a monastery. You know, she tried to be conscientious. She held on to Imperium, but it was disappearing. It was holding on to water. It was disappearing. It's being nibbled away. What's happened? We were an empire. We could enact policies at the border. We could build the navy. We could increase taxes by 1% or decrease them by 5% and actually implement policies. We could make decisions here. We could talk about them and make something happen. But now that's over. Forces beyond our control that we don't even understand are nibbling away. 1071, of a kind of wretched guy who's trying to recreate Imperium because Turks are now raiding all along in Anatolia, burning estates, you know, burning down bridges. They're taking over. Our recruiting ground is disappearing to these Turks. They're these nomads. We can't hardly pin them down. They really know how to fight, but they're kind of almost a mob themselves. He cobbles together this army. He's still got some Varangians in there. He sends them off to Manzikert in Armenia. It gets cut to pieces. It's over. Man. So Imperium works very well indeed until it
doesn't.
Yeah. So it's not. Don't think that what I'm saying is that it's an absolute.
Right.
But it tends to be better for the common people. But the decline and wretched withering away of the Byzantine Empire. Basil was this extraordinary story of Imperium. Zoe was the exact opposite story. Not of aristocracy, Imperium. Of Imperium, right. Not of aristocracy.
Right.
This is how you fuck up Imperium. This is how you fuck it up.
It's actually nice that they were so.
Yeah.
especially so close together in time.
Yeah. Manzikert leads to the Crusades. The Turks destroy the Byzantine army. There's a 10-year civil war that follows where Byzantine, it vanishes. It's like a Thanos glove. By the time, and then Alexis Comnenus tries to reestablish Imperium, but he can't because there's not the core strength left anymore. He has to appeal to these Western knights. It brings the First Crusade. And the First Crusade is arguably even worse for the Byzantine.
Right.
Or the Crusades are worse than the Turks. It's incredible.
Hey, hey, we're getting plundered. Why don't you... Maybe you could come plunder us.
That wasn't what they meant, but, they had hoped for some genuine allies who would like, hey, your cavalry is incredible. You have these invincible armored knights around the year 1100, the 1095.
Right.
Some of you helped us in Norman Sicily or whatever.
Well, and then until, up until 4 decades before, I still don't really know how seriously to take
the Great Schism.
Yeah, the idea of like the homogenous institution that large, but yeah, that 1054.
Yeah,
that's the East-West split.
Yeah.
in the
yeah.
What
that happened under Zoe's watch.
Oh man, never
1054.
heard of Zoe, to be honest.
She was awful. She was a mess. Something of a joke.
I know at the time there were 5 patriarchates or sects.
Yeah.
And Rome excommunicated the Eastern 4, and
maybe only I don't even know.
The Eastern 4 excommunicated Rome.
Yeah.
Mutually.
Yeah, cause the Byzantines at the time. This is before Manzikert, 1054. Oh man, the details of the Great Schism are really something. Why was a papal envoy in Constantinople?
I don't know. They were probably talking about unleavened or leavened Eucharist.
No.
I don't know.
They wanted Byzantine help against the Normans in southern Italy. They were looking for an alliance. They weren't trying to pick a fight at all. They were like, "Hey, you've got the navy and you've got some good infantry. We're in Italy." And the Pope is like, Leo the Great Ninth. I don't know. He was like, I need help from the Patriarch and Emperor in Constantinople. He had sent that envoy there to help. But Cardinal Humbert and whoever the Patriarch was, forget his name, the Patriarch was a real arrogant guy because Byzantium is at its height.
Right.
Even though they're already rotting. They're rotting and they don't even know it. The Imperium is rotten at its core.
Hollowing out, and
they don't even fucking know it. He's like, hey, why don't you do the, Filioque way or whatever? And Humbert, right? Humbert is like, fuck you. Peter died in Rome, not Constantinople. We are superior to you. And then the
first among equals.
Yeah. And then the excommunication.
Peter's the first pope.
They were there to get help from Byzantium, not to excommunicate them. And Leo had died. The Pope had died when Humbert slaps down the excommunication. So it was technically not even fucking valid.
Wow.
So, yeah, they were at the time, East-West, they had diverged culturally, but the details of legalities and all this hadn't manifested yet. But then by the time you get to 1204 and they're like, meh, the Western Knights are like, fuck these Greeks.
Who are these guys? Right.
Yeah, fuck them. Like they're treacherous. They're more Easterner than, God, had Basil had a son? Like, dude, marry some aristocrat from the East, knock her up, and get it done. Like, he really dropped the ball, bust a nut. Like, you gotta fucking do it because he has so much legitimacy. He is unassailable. He is the emperor of the Romans. He converted the Serbians and the Slavs in the in the Balkans, and he had like the Slavonic Rite, He really knew what he was doing, and he knew how to use imperial legitimacy and also facts on the ground and be smart with your military.
Well, and it's also one thing to inherit imperial legitimacy, which he sort of did, but he also sort of had to reestablish it.
Yes, exactly.
So you have to, I mean, it's
such a good story because it really highlights all the important characteristics of Imperium versus Aristocracy, because you can see it in real time happening, and you can even see the parties involved. Yeah. Aristoi. That was the name of those families in Anatolia.
Got
Aristoi. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But yeah, so just briefly, here's the coda.
Sure.
If you look at mainstream news today, they say, "Oh, Vladimir Putin is a tyrant.
Mm-hmm.
Xi Jinping is a tyrant."
Mm-hmm.
No, they have Imperium. That's the difference. The central governments of Russia and China are almost non-existent at the local level. Like,
right.
You almost never interact.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and then that's
a feature of Imperium.
A lot of just thinking about that question I asked you earlier. Can you recognize an aristocracy from the bottom? But also, even when I was in one of these dumb classes I took, it was a religion class about Chinese religion, and this, if I remember right, there's only 5 legitimate ways to be religious in China.
Right.
Most of them are imports. Right?
Yeah.
2 flavors of Christianity are recognized. Buddhism is recognized. Maybe Taoism.
Or like
maybe Islam. I can't remember what the 5 are, but unfortunately, the 20th century in modernization was not always kind to like the actual like indigenous folk religion.
Right.
But I remember reading articles about the Matsu festival in Fujian or whatever in Taiwan and Fujian. And Matsu's sort of, well, she's very familiar. She's sometimes motherly. She might help you out if she's an intercessor. It's sort of syncretically familiar with other female deities, but like, they're having this big party for Matsu, even though the folk religion at a certain time was sort of illegal and maybe still on the books, not recognized.
Yeah.
But the point being made was just like, well, there's a lot of wiggle room at the bottom.
Yeah.
Really, we don't leave that up to your local.
There's a phrase from Imperial China, the dynasties, called Tian Gao Huangdi Wan, which means heaven is high and the emperor is far away. and
Gao, yeah.
Yeah. And you say it when you're jaywalking,
right,
or parking in the wrong spot.
That's so good.
And it's real, because it's like, if that's what Imperium means. The imperial administration is not there to make sure you don't jaywalk. It's there to direct the course of the entire civilization. And after millennia in the case of China, or 1 millennium in the case of Russia, this is why they tolerate people like Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin. Because Vladimir Putin is going to be right up there with Vladimir the First, Vladimir the Great, of like, okay, you steered us in the right direction. And the next time an American who lives in an aristocratic system complains about the weight of bureaucracy or red tape, ask yourself, is that an artifact of your free world? Who do you think has more red tape? Or an imperial order, Because they do. They're not absolutes. They can come and go, And examples abound. I could get into them. I don't want to. Byzantium is a very good example, because we have that one dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, ask yourself, who oppresses you more, your local aristocrat or the emperor who is far away?